Welcome back to Dad Drinks, where every pour tells a story. And today's story is going to be about the great Dunkin Donuts compact of 1985. And we're going to start with the drink, which is the old fashioned. So why did I think old fashioned? Well, it's the donut, right? And we're going to get into that and how when I went to Dunkin Donuts when I was a kid, they only had like 3 donuts and one of them was the old fashioned. But let's start with the drink. The history behind the drink is this is probably one of the oldest cocktails there is out there, and it's basically a 3-ingredient cocktail. Started out in the Old West. You go into a bar, you'd ask for whiskey, you'd ask for beer. That was pretty much your options. And then someone somewhere along the way decided to start adding some stuff to it. And what they added was basically just sugar, whiskey, either bourbon or rye nowadays, and bitters. And that was it. So that's the classic old-fashioned. Now you can go out and you can get old-fashioned syrups and you can use simple syrup if that's what you want to use. The classic way to do it would be to use sugar cubes, but we didn't have any sugar cubes, so all we're going to use right now is just basically 2 packets of sugar. Actually 1 packet of sugar, because those seem to be really full. So you just put the sugar cube or the sugar at the bottom. You're going to take your bitters, and this happens to be Angostura orange bitters. Typically, the classic old-fashioned would just be Angostura bitters. 3 little shots of that, 3 dashes. And then what you would do is you grab your muddler, and if you actually had a sugar cube, you would actually muddle the sugar cube with all of that. But we don't have a sugar cube, so we're not going to worry about that. And one other thing is that an old-fashioned is typically made what's known as in the glass. You can use a mixing glass. You can throw some ice cubes in there or whatever and mix it up in this and then pour it into your other glass. But typically, it's made in the glass. So we've got our sugar. We got our bitters. And then basically, it's just 2 ounces of your whiskey. Whether you want to use bourbon, whether you want to use rye, you can also go out and just use, they call it American whiskey because it just doesn't meet the definitions of bourbon. Whatever you want to use. And it's all up to you. I am using Long Branch. We've got Buffalo Trace down here on the bar. I've got Larceny. I've got Elijah Craig. I'm pretty well stocked for bourbon. So you can use whatever you want. You know what? You want to go out and you want to use Blanton's in your old fashioned? I'm not going to judge you. Everyone else is gonna, but I'm not. You use whatever you want. That's your option. That's your way to do it. And then you just kind of mix it up. You just kind of want to dissolve the sugar into all of that. So we just get it all mixed up. And then if you're really fancy, and I am typically not, but because we're showing you how to make these things classically, you take an orange, and we're going to see if this works. Try and get your orange peel off of here. You're just going to get a little bit of an orange. Wow, it actually sort of worked. You just throw it in there, and that's your garnish. And then the last thing you want to grab is just some ice. And I know I had a big ice cube around here. Yeah, I like to use Big Rocks. That's my thing. You want to just use the ice, that you get out of the freezer or whatever, that's fine. I like to use Big Rocks. So you just drop that in there, splash it all over the place, make a mess, whatever. And there you go. You got your old fashioned. Nice. So, what's the story? Because that's the whole thing, right? You get your drinks together, you sit down with your friends, and you kind of tell stories. Well, I'm going to tell you the story about Dunkin Donuts. And this all starts one Sunday night, probably about a year ago back. I'm watching the History Channel, and on Sunday nights they run these things that are, whoever built America, the brands that built America, the men who built America. Well, it was the brands. And the brands that they decided to have that night was how Dunkin Donuts and Krispy Kreme kind of went against each other. And one of the things that happens is that as I'm going through it, they're talking about the guy who did Dunkin Donuts and how he had 30-something flavors of donuts. And I'm like, no, he didn't. When I grew up, there wasn't 30-something things of donuts at Dunkin Donuts. What there was 3, maybe 4. You had the old-fashioned, which was just a donut that had nothing on it. You had glazed, you had jelly, and maybe you had powdered sugar, right? No Boston creams, no sprinkles, none of that other stuff. That's it. And then when you went into a Dunkin' Donuts, you got coffee-flavored coffee. There was no French vanilla and hazelnut and soy milk and all that. You got coffee-flavored coffee, and you had two options. Did you want sugar, or did you want cream, or did you want, so three options, or did you want both? That's it. You got it black, or you got it with sugar and cream, which was a regular, or you got it with just sugar, or you just got it with cream, or however you wanted to do it, right? And I started thinking about that, and I'm going, there's no way there were 30-something things of donuts at Dunkin' Donuts. And then I realized something. And this is sort of the Mandela effect, right? Where you think you remember something happening, like everyone thinks that the end of Queen's We Are the Champions ends with Of the World. It doesn't end with that. There is a part in there where Freddie does sing We Are the Champions of the World, but that's not how it ends. Or we think that Darth Vader said, Luke, I am your father. He didn't. He just said, I am your father. So the Mandela effect for me was, I never went to a Dunkin' Donuts when I was a kid. When I was a kid, what they had in the town that I grew up in Northwest Connecticut, were a series of donut shops that were called Bess Eaton. Bessseaton. Because it was supposed to be Best Eaten Donuts, but they decided, well, we'll make it sound like some woman owned this place, and some woman started this whole thing. That's what we had. We had one Dunkin' Donuts in the town where I grew up in. It was huge. It was not like Dunkin' Donuts today. That Dunkin' Donuts now is no longer a Dunkin' Donuts. It's actually a full-service, sit-down restaurant. That's how big it was. And we never went there because it was all the way downtown, and I didn't live downtown. And all the chain ones, the 5 or 6 that we had, were all Bess Eatons. And Bess Eatons are gone now. They started in Westerly, Rhode Island. And ultimately, they've gone out of business. And Dunkin' Donuts, especially in New England, where I'm from, have proliferated, have exploded. In the city of Boston alone, there are 85 Dunkin' Donuts. And I think I know why. This all happened probably around the time I was graduating high school, which is around 1986. And what I think happened was all of the governors of the New England states got together, they sat down in a room, and they were worried. They were worried about this hippie thing from Seattle, this Starbucks thing, with the woman and the moon on their labels, and they were worried about Krispy Kreme and those guys coming up from the South. But I think mostly they were worried about Tim Horton. Yeah, the hockey guy from Canada who said when he retired, I'm going to open up a bunch of donut shops. And there are tons of Tim Hortons in like northern New York, and they had started to infiltrate into northern Maine and into New Hampshire and into Vermont. So these 6 governors sat down and said, we can't have that happen. Dunkin' Donuts started in Randolph, Massachusetts, and we need to keep them here. And what they decided at that point was that there would be no one within New England who on average would be more than 10 minutes away from a Dunkin' Donuts. And seriously, like I just said, 89 Dunkin' Donuts in the city of Boston alone. Is that how it really happened? Who knows? But who says it didn't? Who says they didn't just sit in a room and they were all talking about it, and then, Rhode Island started saying something, they all looked at it and said, shh, Rhode Island, the adults are talking. And they decided that that's what was going to happen. And that's how it's happened. So see, there you go. Dad drinks. Every pour tells a story.